My name is Emma Thompson, and until 6 months ago, I thought I was the luckiest woman in the world. I had what most people would call a picture-perfect life, a beautiful house in the suburbs of Portland, 2 healthy children, and a husband who seemed like the ideal partner. Mark was charming, reliable, and always said the right things. He remembered birthdays, bought flowers on anniversaries, and made pancakes with the kids on Sunday mornings. We had been together for 12 years, and I honestly believed we were a team, solid, loyal, and deeply in love. Our days were filled with routine, but the kind of routine that feels comforting. I would get up early to prepare breakfast, help the kids get dressed for school, and pack lunches. Mark would kiss me goodbye before leaving for work, the same kiss every morning, and I'd watch him drive off thinking, this is what stability looks like. I was proud of our marriage. My friends envied me, and I never questioned anything, until I did. It started with something small. A charge on our joint credit card for a children's clothing boutique I'd never heard of. At first, I assumed it was a mistake. Maybe a duplicate charge from a store I had visited months ago. But as I scrolled through our statements, I noticed more strange transactions. Groceries bought at unfamiliar places, movie tickets purchased in parts of town we rarely visited, restaurant bills from family-friendly diners that I had never set foot in. At first, I rationalized it. Maybe Mark was grabbing lunch near his office. Maybe he picked up something for a coworker. I didn't want to be paranoid. But the charges kept appearing, and one day I saw a receipt for a toy store with a note. Happy birthday, Aiden. We don't have an Aiden. I remember staring at that line over and over again, trying to come up with a logical explanation. Maybe it was a gift for a colleague's child. Maybe a friend had asked him for help. But in my gut, I knew something wasn't right. The doubt started to take root, quietly at first, like a whisper in the back of my mind, and then louder, until it was all I could hear. Still, I waited. I told myself I was overreacting. I didn't want to be that woman who snoops through her husband's things. But curiosity is a powerful thing. Or maybe it was fear disguised as curiosity. Either way, one night when Mark was in the shower, I opened his phone. I knew his passcode, he had never hidden it, and I wasn't expecting to find anything. What I found changed my life. There were photos. Not of another woman in a romantic sense, but of Mark holding a toddler I had never seen before. A little boy with soft blonde curls and a shy smile. There were videos, too. A birthday party in someone else's backyard. My husband, my Mark, lifting the boy onto his shoulders while a woman stood beside him, holding a baby girl in her arms. They looked like a family, like our family, but not us. I sat there frozen, my hands trembling, unable to process what I was seeing. I didn't recognize the woman. She was maybe in her early 30s, with kind eyes and tired shoulders. There was a closeness between them, the kind that comes from shared parenthood. And then I saw the contact name under the video. Sarah, home. That word, home, hit me like a punch. It meant that this wasn't just some fling. This wasn't a side affair or a stupid mistake. This was something else entirely. Mark had a second home, a second family, in the same city. Just 20 minutes from ours. For several days, I lived in a kind of suspended reality. I would wake up, pack the kids' lunches, wave Mark off to work, and smile when he smiled, all while knowing. I knew he was leaving not just for his office, but for her, for them. And yet, I said nothing. It wasn't fear that kept me silent, not entirely. It was disbelief. I was trying to convince myself that what I had seen didn't mean what I feared. That maybe it was something more innocent. Maybe he was helping a single mom. Maybe the child wasn't his. Maybe anything but the truth. But every lie I told myself crumbled under the weight of what I already knew deep down. And so I did what I never thought I would do. I started watching him, tracking him, quietly, discreetly. I downloaded a tracking app on his phone one night under the pretense of updating our family safety app. He didn't even question it. And then I followed. It was a Thursday afternoon when I saw it with my own eyes. Mark left work early. I knew his schedule well enough, and drove toward a part of the city we rarely visited. Not dangerous, just unfamiliar. I parked a few blocks behind him and watched from a distance as he walked up the steps of a modest two-story house, knocked on the door, and was immediately greeted by the same woman from the photos. She smiled as he stepped inside. The boy, the one I had seen in the videos, ran to him yelling something I couldn't hear. I sat in my car until the sun went down, staring at that house, my stomach twisted in knots. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, numb, hollow, paralyzed. The next few days were a blur. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I gathered information. I needed more than feelings. I needed facts. I searched through emails, financial records, social media, under-burner accounts. Slowly, a timeline began to form. He had known her, Sarah, for at least 5 years. Their son, Aiden, was 4. The baby girl in the video must have been no more than a year old. That meant she was born while I was still pregnant with our second. Our timelines overlapped, painfully, brutally. What broke me most wasn't the betrayal itself, but the realization that he was living 2 complete lives, ours and theirs. It wasn't just cheating. It was duplicity on a scale I couldn't comprehend. 2 homes, 2 sets of children, 2 women believing they were his only one, and all within the same city limits. He wasn't even hiding, far away, just enough to stay out of sight. The longer I sat with that truth, the more questions filled my mind. Did he love her? Did he love me? Was any of it real? I looked at my children differently, not because of them, but because of him. I wondered how much of their lives had been wrapped in a lie. Was he thinking of her when he tucked our daughter into bed? Was he picturing them when he kissed my forehead? I knew I couldn't pretend forever. But how do you destroy the life your children know? How do you shatter their world, even if it was built on deception? One night, as Mark lay beside me, breathing steadily in his sleep, I turned to look at him. I studied his face in the soft light, the peacefulness, the absence of guilt. And I realized he had no intention of stopping. No remorse. No conflict. He had built this double life carefully, deliberately. He was never going to confess. So I would have to be the one to expose him. But not before I spoke to her. Not before I looked Sarah in the eyes and asked the one question that haunted me most. Did she know about me? I rehearsed what I was going to say 100 times. At night, in the shower, while driving, even while folding laundry. I imagined all the ways she might react, shocked, angry, defensive, or worse, indifferent. But no amount of preparation could have truly readied me for what I would find. It took me 2 weeks to gather the courage. I waited for a day I knew Mark would be out of town. A work trip he'd casually mentioned without much detail, probably thinking I wouldn't notice the lack of hotel confirmations or flight receipts. While he was gone, I drove to Sarah's house. Not with rage, not even with a plan, just a quiet, determined resolve to look the truth in the eye. The neighborhood was peaceful. Children's toys in the yard, wind chimes swaying gently on the porch. It didn't look like the battleground it had become in my mind. I stood there for a moment before ringing the bell, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might betray me. She answered quickly, wearing sweatpants and holding a bottle. Her baby girl, the one from the video, peeked out from behind her shoulder. The moment Sarah saw me, her expression shifted, not confusion, but wariness. As if, on some level, she already knew. I introduced myself, keeping my voice steady. I told her who I was, Emma, Mark's wife. The words felt unnatural, heavy in the air. She didn't slam the door. She didn't scream. Instead, she stepped aside and let me in. Inside, the home felt lived in. There were drawings on the fridge, toys scattered across the carpet, baby clothes folded neatly on the couch. It smelled like lavender and formula. I realized, with a pang, that it felt a lot like my home. Sarah sat across from me at her small kitchen table, and for a long moment, we just stared at each other. 2 women, 2 lives, 1 man. She was the first to speak. Her voice was soft but tired. And then she told me her side. Sarah met Mark 6 years ago at a charity event. She was new in town, recovering from a toxic relationship, and he was kind to her. Gentle. Safe. He said he was divorced. said his marriage had ended peacefully and that he was taking time to rebuild. He never hid her, not entirely. He came around often, took her to dinner, celebrated holidays with her and the kids. He even stayed the night regularly. He paid bills. He changed diapers. He wasn't a ghost in her life. He was deeply present. She had no idea he was still married. She believed everything he told her. And just like me, she thought she had found stability, love, a future. As she spoke, I watched her closely, waiting for signs of deceit, resentment, calculation. But there was none. Only pain. The kind I recognized in myself. It became painfully clear we were both victims. He had told her he was working long hours when he was with me. He told me he was mentoring young staff members or traveling for business when he was with her. He had even fabricated fake work emails and calendars. His lies were deep, layered, sophisticated. I wasn't stupid. Neither was she. We had simply been manipulated skillfully and intentionally. The more she revealed, the more my anger shifted from her to him. This wasn't an affair. This was architecture. He had built this lie with the care of a man constructing a house from the ground up. We were living in separate homes, raising separate children, believing in separate futures, all bound together by one man's cowardice. By the end of our conversation, we sat in silence for a long time. There were no answers, no apologies, just two women sitting in the wreckage of a life neither of us had asked for. Before I left, Sarah looked at me with tears in her eyes and asked what I planned to do next. I told her the truth. I didn't know. For the next few days, I drifted through my life like a shadow of myself. I went through the motions, school drop-offs, grocery shopping, answering emails, but I wasn't really there. My mind kept looping through every moment I had shared with Mark. Every kiss, every I love you, every quiet dinner after the kids went to sleep. I dissected his words, his tone, his absences. I tried to trace the beginning of a lie, as if understanding when it started would somehow make it easier to end. When Mark returned from his so-called business trip, he walked through the door like nothing had happened. He kissed me on the cheek and smiled at the kids, completely unaware that the life he had crafted so carefully was seconds away from detonation. I waited until the kids were asleep. I didn't want them to hear what was coming, though I knew their lives would soon be touched by it, whether I liked it or not. We sat in the living room. He was scrolling through his phone, relaxed. I was staring at him, silent. My hands were cold, my mouth dry, but I had rehearsed this moment in my head too many times to hesitate. I asked him if he had anything to tell me. At first, he looked confused. He laughed softly, made a joke. But when I didn't smile back, when I held his gaze for just a little too long, something shifted in his eyes. That's when he knew. And suddenly, the room was heavier, quieter. He didn't confess right away. He stalled. He danced around the truth. He used words like complicated and misunderstanding, like I had somehow walked in on a scene I wasn't meant to see and misread it. But I didn't let him twist it. I laid out everything. The receipts, the photos, the videos, the tracking, my visit to Sarah. There was no more pretending. He sat there with his head in his hands, saying he never meant to hurt anyone, that he loved us both, that it just happened, that he didn't know how to stop once it started, that he didn't want to lose the kids, any of them. But nothing he said mattered anymore. His words were paper trying to hold back a flood. Everything he said felt small in comparison to what he had done, not just to me, but to our children, to Sarah, to the children he was hiding, to the families he had faked into existence. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just told him to leave. He begged me to reconsider. He said we could go to therapy, that we could work it out. He even had the audacity to suggest I give it time. But there was no time long enough to unmake what he had done. When he walked out that night, he didn't take anything with him. Not a bag, not a jacket, not a single photo from the wall. I think, in his heart, he still believed I would let him come back. But the door closed behind him with a finality I'd never known before. The next morning was one of the hardest of my life. I had to look my children in the eyes and find a way to explain why their father wouldn't be there for breakfast. I told them he was staying somewhere else for a while. My daughter cried. My son just sat quietly, looking out the window. They didn't know the full truth, and I wasn't ready to give it to them. Not yet. How do you tell your children that their father didn't just break your heart? He broke your entire reality. In the days that followed, Mark tried to contact me. Calls, messages, emails, some apologetic, some defensive. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Not while I was still piecing myself together. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if Sarah would keep seeing him, or if she would shut the door like I did. I didn't know how to rebuild my life or how to protect my children from the fallout. But I knew one thing, with absolute certainty. I would never be that woman again. The one who trusted blindly. The one who smiled through the doubt. The one who believed that love alone could protect a home from collapse. Because love, real love, it doesn't live a double life. After Mark left, the house felt empty in a different way. Not quiet. Our kids still laughed, still argued over cereal, still asked to stay up late. But the silence between the moments, that stillness after the noise, felt unbearable. It was a kind of silence that clung to the walls. The kind that whispered, he was never really who you thought he was. I began waking up early, not to make breakfast or prep school bags, just to sit in the dark with a cup of coffee and breathe through the ache in my chest. My body moved through the day, but my heart was somewhere else, curled up in the wreckage of the life I thought I had. I hadn't told the kids the truth yet. Not all of it, but they could sense the change. My daughter Lily became clingier. She kept asking when Daddy would come back. I gave her vague answers I hated myself for. My son Noah withdrew. He was only 10, but he started sleeping with his door locked. Started keeping things from me, just like his father had. That scared me more than anything. In public, I wore my best mask. I smiled at neighbors. I answered texts from friends with emojis and "we're doing fine" lies. But inside I was unraveling. And still I didn't cry. Not because I was strong, because I was numb. I was too full of betrayal to make room for grief. One afternoon, as I was folding laundry, a pair of Mark's socks slipped from the basket. It was such a small thing, stupid even, but it stopped me cold. I stared at them for minutes, my hands frozen. Then I threw them in the trash. The sound it made, soft fabric hitting plastic, felt like thunder in the silence. That was the first time I allowed myself to cry. But crying didn't fix anything. So I called a lawyer. I didn't know what I wanted: divorce, separation, revenge. I just needed clarity, control, something real in a world where everything had been an illusion. The lawyer was calm, too calm. She had seen this before, many times. That comforted me, and also made me feel replaceable. Like my pain was just one more file in a cabinet full of broken families. We talked about assets, custody, timelines. Legal words like deception, dual residency, emotional damage. I couldn't believe this was my life now, discussing my marriage like a failed business deal. But the worst part? I still missed him. Not the real him. Not the liar. I missed the version I thought was real. The man who made me tea when I was sick, who danced with me in the kitchen, who whispered, "You're my home," when the kids weren't looking. That man never existed. But I loved him anyway. A few weeks later, just when I'd started breathing a little easier, he came back. He just showed up at my door with a bouquet of flowers and tired eyes. As if nothing had happened. As if months of lies, a double life, and the pain he caused were just some kind of misunderstanding that could be forgiven. He said he was sorry, that he had made a mistake, that the other woman didn't really mean anything, that things had just been emotionally complicated. But every word he spoke felt rehearsed, like a script he had practiced in front of a mirror. I sat there quietly, listening, watching how he failed to notice that I wasn't the same woman he had left behind. I was someone else now, a woman he had broken, and who was learning how to survive in the ruins. But the real punch to the gut was still coming. The next day, I got a message from a woman I didn't know on Instagram. It was short. "I'm sorry, but I think we've both been involved with the same man." At first, I thought it was a mistake. But when she sent me pictures of them together years ago, my stomach turned. She wasn't the other woman. She was one of many. Her name was Lena. She lived just 10 minutes away from me. 10. For years, we had been attending the same local markets, maybe waiting in line at the same coffee shop. Our kids were close in age, hers just a year younger than mine. She told me that she had been with him for over 4 years, that he stayed with her every weekend, claiming he was on business trips when he was with me. He had been splitting his life like a juggler, holidays with us, vacations with her, Valentine's Day with me 1 year, her the next. Birthday dinners, school recitals, anniversaries. He had created a calendar of deceit, carefully calculated so we'd never collide. But he got sloppy. Lena had found a receipt in his coat pocket, one with my name on it. It led her down a rabbit hole, and that's how she found me. At first, she was angry at me. She thought I was the intruder in her life. But once we compared timelines, photos, text messages, we realized we were both victims. And then she said something that chilled me to my bones. I think there's another one. At first, I laughed nervously. It seemed impossible. But then she showed me an email, a confirmation for a dinner reservation made under his name, on a night when he told both of us he was out of town. The reservation was for 2, and it wasn't for either of us. This wasn't an affair. This wasn't even a second family. This was a pattern, a system. A man who lived like a phantom, slipping between identities. And I knew then I had only seen the surface of the wreckage. I confronted Mark again, this time armed with the truth from Lena. The look on his face when I laid out the evidence was different, not defensive or dismissive, but something colder, almost resigned. He no longer tried to explain or justify. It was as if he knew the walls he had built were finally crumbling. I told him I wasn't just a victim anymore, that I wouldn't be part of his lies any longer, that he had betrayed not only me, but everyone who trusted him, and most of all, that the children deserved better than a father who lived in shadows. He begged for forgiveness, said he'd change, but I couldn't trust words anymore. I could only trust actions, and his actions had destroyed everything. The hardest part was telling the children. I wanted to protect them, shield them from the chaos. But the truth has a way of coming out, no matter how carefully you try to hide it. Lily cried for days. Noah stopped speaking to me for a while. They didn't understand why their father was gone, why he wasn't answering their calls, why their worlds were breaking apart. I had to be their strength when I felt the weakest. In the weeks that followed, I surrounded myself with support, friends, family, even a counselor who helped me navigate the storm. Slowly, I began to rebuild. Not just my life, but my identity. I was no longer just Mark's wife or the other woman's counterpart. I was Emma, a mother fighting for her children's future. But the scars, they don't fade easily. And the question that haunts me still is, how does a man live 2 lives and expect both to survive? It wasn't easy. Every day was a battle, with memories, doubts, and fears. I had to learn how to trust myself again, to believe that I deserved honesty, love, and peace, to show my children that life goes on, even when it feels like it's falling apart. I started small. Morning walks with Lily and Noah, long talks over hot chocolate, nights filled with bedtime stories and promises that things would get better. I returned to old passions, painting, journaling, pieces of myself that had been buried under years of pain. I also learned the importance of forgiveness. Not forgiveness for him, no, but forgiveness for myself, for trusting, for hoping, for loving. The road ahead is still long. Some days I still feel the weight of betrayal pressing down. But I am stronger now, wiser, and I know that even after the darkest nights, the sun will rise. Because my story isn't just one of heartbreak. It's one of survival, of courage, of rebirth. I am not just the woman he left behind. I am the woman who will build a new life on her own terms. And that is my truth.